I am extremely happy right now because for the last few weeks I've been doing broadcasts where when I look at myself in my lighting, I know it's very, very blue and nobody probably really cares, but it's just not a good look. And the reason why I was very blue is because someone came in to my office and swiped the orange ring light filter gel thingies. And there's nobody who comes into my office. There's nobody here. It's pandemic. So anyway, I finally ordered some new ones. They finally arrived last week. They're installed and I feel like now I have a normal skin tone. So very excited. So how are you this fine Friday evening? Are you cold? Are you chilly? Are you staying warm? I have this little cowl neck on. Well, I thought that we'd do something real fast, real casual. I have been in a Bible study with a new friend. Her name's Maria. And I don't think she would mind me telling you, since I'm not saying her last name, that she's been struggling with some anxiety. Honestly, I don't know very many people who aren't struggling with some anxiety right now. You may be a believer, you may not. Being a believer does not mean that you can actually practice what you preach all the time. So even though I do believe that God is control and that the outcome is going to be awesome, that doesn't necessarily mean that I think he is micromanaging my decisions or how I go about life. I try to give him control, and things are often better when I can remind myself of that. But hey, if you're struggling, if you're in that same boat, if you're got a little anxiety, yeah, that's humanity. So anyway, thank you for joining me this evening. As you can see, I wanted to turn on my little tree, my little outdoor tree one more time, because I feel that once it gets to like February, the kind of winter decor isn't as cool anymore. So anyway, that's what I got going on here, and just trying to warm my heart and my body this evening. Well, throughout this last week, I've had two questions concerning Bible prophecy. What is it? Why does it seem so doom and gloom? Why is it so scary? So I thought we would have just a quick and cash discussion about what Bible prophecy is. And it is different from kind of how we use the word in our everyday chat. I know that when we watch TV shows, especially, some of the, I don't know. I'm thinking about the Matrix. So sci-fi stuff, it seems like there's always prophecies, great prophecies of someone who's going to come and fulfill roles. And so the word prophet and prophecy are not necessarily only in religion. They're certainly not only in Christianity, but it always seems kind of mystical. A lot of the time it involves the future. And a lot of times people who give prophecies, whether it's in the Bible or, not even religious, it's like you think of this certain type of person who might be wearing a cloak, might be kind of shadowy or shady, or might be weird, it might dress differently or look differently. There seems to be something of a mental illness that marks these people a lot of the time. So I am just being frank about this. Even in the Bible, there are some pretty stinking weirdos. So if you've got questions, you're not alone. But I also was kind of interested in reading about the oracle at Delphi or Delphi. And it seems like every group of people, religious, not religious, Christian, pagan, all kinds of people are interested in this word and what it means. So, okay. So the biblical definition is pretty simple. It is a prophecy is simply a message from God, and it is usually through a human. It's usually passed through a human who is close to God, who is living a life of character, moral character. And God uses usually a person. Now, I guess you could argue that angels also give prophecies in the Bible, but a prophet is simply someone then who passes on that message. Okay, so real easy for the Bible's definition. It's a message from God, usually communicated through a human messenger who shares it with an audience. That's it. Now, there are many different types of prophecies, lots of different content, but you can kind of break it down into two main themes. I debate whether or not to bring this up because it can be a little confusing, but I've heard old school preachers and teachers say that you can talk about prophecy in two ways. The first is a foretelling, or a speaking forth of principles, laws, behaviors that because of, reading scriptures, hanging out with other godly people, that those things are of God. It doesn't require necessarily any extra insight. It's just sort of the principles of love in action, the principles of correction in action. And of course, those things have to go together. And that you don't have to, have some secret knowledge of the divine to be able to teach or preach, or in this case, tell forth godly things. All right. But I would say, and that's the majority of what people are doing when they say that they're speaking on behalf of God. I just think it's real questionable because, hi, Madai. So good to see you on. The Bible doesn't seem to call those people prophets a lot of times. A lot of times, even the people who do that, they still end up doing a little bit of the other kind of prophecy, which the old school teachers would call foretelling, a foretelling of the future. Thinking of that little cartoon Robin Hood that I watched when I was little, and the soothsayer with the golden globe, Robin Hood's dressed up like a lady, and Little John's yelling, "Fortune's forecast, Lucky Charms." I always thought it was a really cute show. Anyway, the point is that most of what the Bible seems to call prophets are people who end up doing some foretelling of the future. Now, inside that foretelling of the future, the main part of it, the lion's share, as they say, is simply messages from God about warnings and what's going to happen if God's people, especially, don't change their ways. So what a good portion of prophecy and a good portion of foretelling seems to be is what you do if you've ever had kids, or what you do, if you need to warn somebody. It's basically you say, hey, look, there's going to be some consequences to your action naturally, or I'm going to take some responsibility and create some consequences for your action. And now my understanding of God's character means that even when he does that, even when he says there's going to be chastisement for his people, it's always because he's trying to save them from a greater consequence. So, for example, I wrote myself down a note. Let me see if I can find it. For example, there's a story in 1 Samuel 2 and 3 about a high priest. So he's representing all the other priests, representing the people before God. His own sons are acting fools. They are very poor representations of what God wants his people to look like. Their behavior is just out of control. They're taking advantage of people. They're acting in like they don't even know who God is, And so a warning, Samuel gives Eli, the priest, a warning, and he says, "Hey, if your sons keep this up, your lineage is going to be cut short." And this is serious stuff. This is why I feel bad for pastors' kids. This is why pastors' kids get so much pressure, because there is a ton of pressure. They're saying, I want my family to represent God and his love the most. And these guys, sons of the priest, son of a priest, they're acting so inappropriately. They're committing adultery. They're messing with the sacrificial system that's supposed to mean something. Every ritual means something about God, and they're twisting it. People are getting a bad view of who God is. And so they end up dying of what seems to be kind of unnatural causes. It seems like there is, a creepy intervention there. We can talk about that another time. But what prophecies have you heard about in the Bible specifically that worry you or scare you? Maybe we can unpack them sometime. But just to reiterate, a great portion of Bible prophecies are simply people saying, I know God, I observe his laws, I follow him, he's a blessing, and he has sent me to remind you to do the same. So that's a big part of when prophets are telling the future. They're giving warnings. They're basically saying, if you guys don't change your ways, there's going to have to be some consequence to this, because we've signed up to be God's people, and we're in a family, and that stuff's natural. You don't just let people run rampant. So that is by and large the majority of the foretelling of the future. Now, are there predictions about the future? Are there timeline predictions about the end of the world, Armageddon, some of these things? Yes, there absolutely are. And do they seem scary? Yes. And a big part of that is Bible symbolism. Now, we won't get into a ton of it tonight. I wanted to keep this short and sweet, but yes, the Bible does use symbols of beasts to let you know who the players in the games are. And, some people ask, why does God do this? Why doesn't he just name it? Why doesn't he just name the nation? I don't know. I'm going to ask him when I get to heaven. But the whole point of these foretelling prophecies in the Bible, don't get it twisted. They are not to tell you the whole future or reveal the whole future. And I'd love to hear your ponderings on it. But part of the reason why I think that's the case is that, if we knew too much, or if we thought we knew too much, it might affect our free will. And we know that that is of primary concern to God, is to give us free will, to let us process and make decisions based on principles. So that's kind of my thing about it. But anyway, so many of the famous Bible prophecies do predict different powers coming into control and progression from kingdom to kingdom. I say kingdom, but I just mean world power to world power. They're loaded with figurative language, and the prophets who are seeing these messages from God or hearing these messages from God had to think of ways to use the terminology and the ideas that they had to apply them throughout history. And I guess God didn't see that it was necessary to call, Babylon, Babylon throughout the ages, changing its name as he went. So he just called it Babylon. Those of you who know what I'm talking about. Anyway, all right, I will not get off too far here, but basically the point of this future telling is to prepare us for the future, not to give us all the details, or it's just to let us know that God has his wristwatch on, and he knows where we are in history, and he wants us to know that although things seem to be dark, although they might seem to be confusing, he's got a plan, and there are markers along the way so that you can see that what he has said will come to pass has come to pass. And I believe that that is the main point of any time prediction prophecy, is just to let you know, yeah, I've got my eye on it. I know where we are. I know this is messed up, but I want you to know you can trust me. So if you're suffering from anxiety this week, that's something to remember. I want to read from this little Message Bible, which is very poetic. Not a great study translation, but certainly a fun read. I want to read one of out of a book that is known to be prophetic. That's the book of Daniel. Daniel chapter 2 gives us a glimpse of a king named Nebuchadnezzar, or Nebi, as I like to call him. Gives us a glimpse of a king who's had a dream. He believes it's important. He believes it's from God or a God, but he doesn't remember it, and he doesn't know its interpretation. The king calls one of the Hebrew captives in to help him interpret the dream. And so Daniel knows that he needs to deliver, or he's not going to be around very long. And his life and his friend's life, and frankly, all of the people in this man's kingdom's lives are at risk if nobody can answer his question about what he dreamed. Here's a shortcut. God does reveal the dream and the interpretation to Daniel. And here's what he says when God gives him the information. He says, "Blessed be the name of God forever and ever. He knows all, does all. He changes the seasons and guides history. He raises up kings and also brings them down. He provides both intelligence and discernment. He opens up the depths, tells secrets, sees in the dark, light spills out of him. God of all my ancestors, all thanks, all praise. You made me wise and strong. And now you've shown us what we asked for. You've solved the king's mystery." Again, it sounds very poetic. It's a poetic version. But I read that in closing tonight because, well, first of all, my friend Maria really enjoyed it. And I want to encourage you to look at the prophecy in Daniel chapter 2 if you haven't done it, or if you haven't done it in a while. But I want you to really focus on that last bit. Daniel knew that God gave him the interpretation. It wasn't because Daniel was uber smart or, unlocked the code himself. But what he found out is what I've been finding out through my whole life, which is that there is a God who reveals secrets. There is a God who is in control. And there is a God who sets up rulers and takes down rulers. Now, you and I are hurtling through space and time. And I believe that what the Bible teaches is that we are trying to get back to a place where other-centered love and God's kingdom, which is other-centered love, will rule the earth. And that's what that prophecy means to me. It means that every kingdom of man that's set up is not going to last forever, but that God's kingdom will eventually be established and last forever. And it's going to be a good one. So that's my message to you tonight. If you don't have anyone to study the Bible with, if you're interested in the prophecies of the Bible, especially the ones in the book of Daniel, I love that stuff, and I'd love to study with you. If you have a question for me, you can email me, askachristianfriend@gmail.com, and you can, of course, find me on Facebook and YouTube. On Facebook, it's Ask a Christian Friend, and on YouTube, it's just Ask a Christian. So you know where to find me. I'm so happy to see you. Thank you for spending a few minutes of your evening with me, and I'll see you next week. And send me your questions. It's been a pleasure hanging out with you. Bye for now.